Honorable Minister, sibulela ngokuzithobileyo nokungazenzisiyo. Enkosi ma. Eminences, excellencies, distinguished participants, it's an absolute privilege to be in this country at this time, in this context when so many of us dare to hope that joy and peace will prevail. Today we are celebrating from the black pool of African excellence. The people that dare to dream, that are restless because they want out of life slightly more. We're hoping that as we put our hands, our hearts and our souls in piloting, highlighting and celebrating them, that they'll become the type of leaders that are exemplary to themselves and indeed to the people that dare nominate them. Because this country is dying for ethical leadership, for critical, conscious, and courageous leadership. Leadership, because when you do things only for yourself, I'm told in English you are called selfish. When you do things for others, but nonetheless expecting something in return, I'm told you are unselfish. But when you do things for others because you know it's your moral obligation, that you will do it even if there is nobody watching. When you do it because you understand your purpose. Just like the sun rises every single solitary day from the east and sets to the west without fail. Just like the rain falls in those areas where it's needed the most, in the dusty hills of Enkandla, Emondlo naseNgutu, Langanyanga and Guguletu. But also it does so in the arid deserts of this country where it's not so appreciated. It does that nonetheless. I'm then told you are selfless. And all of us aspire for slightly more higher order, this selflessness. Professor Stephen R. Covey talks about this being sequential, not concurrently, simultaneously, and in parallel. In his second book after principle-centered leadership, come on, finish it with me, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, that you cannot really appreciate being independent until and unless you have been dependent on somebody else. And at some stage you say, I want to pull myself up by my own bootstraps. That you find meaning and purpose and glory in knowing and understanding that all of us are interconnected. That I can accomplish that which on my own will take me inordinately long when I'm interdependent. Therefore, interdependence is slightly higher than independence, because independence is higher than dependence. So I congratulate you. I wish that you can take it upon yourselves to say maybe, just maybe, you will spend the first third of this gift that you have been bestowed with called life in just learning, so that the second third you can spend earning. Money is good. Profits are good. So that you can spend the last third of your life sharing. That's how you find meaning. That's how you find purpose. Because success means nothing unless you have somebody to share it with. So I said leadership, not management. Because management is getting things done through other people. If it's to be, then it's up to you. It's about planning, leading, coordinating, and organizing. We know that South Africa's challenges have nothing to do with the availability of resources. Nothing. But that we inherited a capitalist system, but we refuse to manage it. That in a country where there's 55 million of us, as per the last census, and the last financial year ended 28th of Feb 2016, we collected 1.144 trillion South African rands. If you do the math, there is no reason, absolutely no reason whatsoever, why anybody should go hungry, let alone be poor. But that we lack the creativity to better utilize our resources, because we have internalized and accepted that a better life for all doesn't mean for me, but for others. That is leadership. Leadership, because for me, leadership is being genuinely obsessed with the development of others. Instead of being just concerned with the effectiveness and efficiencies in climbing the corporate ladder of success, you beg the question as to whether this ladder is leaning against the correct wall in the first instance. Because success is a progressive realization of a worthy ideal, whatever that worthy ideal is. So in my book, you know that you are a leader when you feel called upon to lead. Isn't that funny, coming from a business leader who's supposed to be rational, empirical, and look at data, rather than ask you in the morning, how are you feeling? But that's exactly what we have missed to connect with human beings. Because business is the people, not the bricks and mortar, because companies that are inappropriately located can always move their headquarters. Those that are short of money can come to Standard Bank, leverage their position, and borrow abundantly. But a company that is poor on people, it's a dead company indeed. So we applaud the people that will receive their certificates and their trophies. Honor them, so that it dictates how you behave the next day, because your colleagues have bestowed on you a singular honor that says you are the best amongst equals. If we get that right, maybe, just maybe, we can give our people the permission to ask the question that says, how can we be better led by a leadership that fully commits on the basis of full understanding? Not somebody that looks at themselves in the mirror thinking that they are leaders, and yet they ask, what is this thing called deficit? Because you've made it your point to understand this that you've been given to lead, because you want to be absolutely the best. You see the cabinet of 400 MPs of Rolihlahla, Nelson Mandela, that's what they did. That's what we remember. They would spend Saturdays and Sundays coming to us in the thick of night, Nicodemously, to ask us, so what is earnings before interest and tax? What is EBITDA? Because they were hungry, they wanted to know. There's a problem when you get elected today and you don't see a point in equipping oneself, in learning, in humbling oneself to say, let me go and find out. You are not a good leader when you are not vulnerable to say to your people, but I don't know. Especially as black people, because we've been excluded for 350 years, not 48 years of National Party rule. So therefore you internalize the fact that I was excluded because I don't know, because I wasn't born a CEO, a vice president and chairman of Shell. like I was. Somebody took a risk on me and made me a chairman of Shell. Council called and held me by the hand and set me up for success. Who are you going to set up for success? Because that's what we ask of you today as leaders. Remember the obsession with the development of others, not of the self. Because after today, you must accept that you're leaders. That you do things not only in your own best interest, but in the best interest of others. Because that's the stuff of leadership. Maybe, just maybe, if we get that right, then we can demonstrate the 3 behaviors of the 21st century. Starting with first embracing technology. Not the way we have not embraced capitalism. Embrace technology, it's a friend. If I had time, I would tell you why. But do. Because technology today allows us to do stuff. Secondly, let us develop this muscle called agility. Not only because it rhymes with stability, because we just want to make sure that we understand this notion that says the purpose of business is not to make profits, it's to survive. Because if you can survive at turbulent times as a business, you can create jobs and pay decent salaries. Because there's a problem when you produce goods and services that your own employees cannot afford. There must be a problem. Business must be the one that says, how can we lift, as the minister says, as we rise, so that our people's quality of lives can be substantially better today compared to yesterday. Because I'm told that's the definition of excellence. Getting better today compared to yesterday. So that on Friday, you can be better than Thursday. Not perfection. Perfection is an absolute standard. Once you are perfect, how better can you get? But that search, that yearning, that hunger, that humility that says, the higher I rise, the more humble I become, the more accessible I posit myself, because I understand why I've been brought to this world for a purpose. It can't be just to eat. It can't be just to have more. It can't be just to gloat. It has to be much better than that. So that we can end by saying, precisely because of tonight, we are now going to spend our time, energy, and effort developing the leaders of the 21st century. Because nobody is going to do to Africa that which we ourselves are not prepared to do for ourselves. Success is not just about mergers and acquisitions. It's about a combination of hard work and intellect and experience. So you should never be made to feel awkward because you went to school and you are excellent. Because you are afraid to be labeled a clever black. You must walk tall with your head held up, because that's what we fought for. So that we can take our rightful place in the world economic agenda. To give to the world that which is uniquely African. We cannot be great just by copying what others have done. Japan became the best because they copied what the Americans did. They did it better and cheaper. But the Indians did better. They said, can we try and anticipate where we think the world will be in 5 years? And they put their people like sausage machine through ICT training. It was no wonder that by 2070, 72% of Silicon Valley was made up of people of Indian extraction. They did not ask for handouts. They didn't say, but we voted, so where's our homes? They applied themselves, hard work, dedication. That's how great nations are built up. By being restless. Because there's nothing romantic about being poor. I'm hoping that today when you leave, you'll ask the question to say, how can it be that I live in the leafy suburbs of Bryanston, 3 kilometers across This bridge, there are people in Alexander that are caught up in the self-perpetuating vicious cycle of abject poverty through no fault of their own, not because they are lazy, but because of systematic, chronological, methodical exclusion. So how can then we realize this inclusive economic growth in our lifetime? If we get that right, maybe, just maybe, we might demonstrate the 4 baseline behaviors of leaders. And in the interest of time, let me just vomit all over you without necessarily unpacking it. Number 1, how do we facilitate effective team collaboration? Because teams achieve extraordinary results, not individual superstars. Today we're looking for people that ask themselves a question every single time they wake up in the morning to say, how can I fit in like a jigsaw puzzle? How can I tessellate as part of a peak performing team? Secondly, to be able to say, how can we then demonstrate this that I spoke about, our absolute obsession for the development of our people? Talent, young talent. Thank God I'm approaching 40. I can also be young talent. Thirdly, to be able to champion the desired change. Not to look at government and say, change our lot in life. No. The people that want something bad enough, but that's the operative word. You have to want it bad enough. They'll stop at nothing to make sure that they get it. I'm talking about Ephraim Chabala, who started by selling mala le mogodu with a bicycle when other fathers were wearing Flosham shoes. And he built the first black-owned, black-run, black-managed cinema in Soweto called AET. And in the 60s became a millionaire. That P.W. Botha would come in the thick of night to come and visit. Of Dr. Sem Mutswenyane, that it took them 5 glorious years to raise 1 mega million rand to start their own bank called the African Bank. And when that government did not like this black success, they upped the capital adequacy requirement, CAR, and they sold it. They'd written by hand on a black notebook every single rand they got from black shopkeepers. They sold it at a profit, and every single one went to those. He sought them out, found them, and not a cent could be traced that he stole. That, to me, is leadership. How do we champion the type of change we want? The type of change we want is the one that recognizes that when most people say, this is the current reality, this is the future vision, even if it's just in the planning process, that says, this is our current performance, here's our plan, we call it mind the gap. How do we go and get this that we want? But tonight's leaders will say, this is how we are performing. What is this notion called ultimate potential? And how can our people realize the ultimate potential? Too many of our people are not even realizing their potential because they just don't have access to opportunities. When we work together, not even the sky is the limit. Last night, Takalani and I went to dinner hosted by Vasi Naidu, the new CEO, the new chairman of Nedbank. And we shared just learnings about how we have touched 207 schools where we work only with principals. We don't even see the pupils. They call them learners now. Only with principals. To say, imagine if we imbued them with leadership qualities and they believed that they were leaders. Just that. So that they can better lead the 30, 40 teachers. And something magical happens. The schools start on time. There's one not far from here, 40% pass rate, it went to 85. Just by assigning every single one of the 207 schools with a CEO that they can talk to on a regular basis. And how out of the blue these school principals found their voice and they did magic. That is the force of nature. That's what happens when people are determined. That's what it means when you want to champion the type of change you want. You can't complain and say, how come pass rate is now 30%? Is what can we do collectively? What is the role of business in ensuring that we build our own timber rather than looking at government and say, but you're not giving people that are skilled enough for the 21st century, the fourth industrial revolution of artificial intelligence, of robotics, of cryptocurrencies, of driverless cars. But because we acted, if business had transformed on its own in the 23 years that we've been free, today it will be much easier for us to put our hands so that together we defeat state capture. But because we didn't, we forgone our right to speak, our license to operate. And that's why we made it easy for our people to resonate with a script that was not written by ourselves, but by Bell Pottinger that says we are now white monopoly capital. That radical economic transformation. I'm not English, but this is tautologous. Because transformation means fundamentally breaking with the past. Transformation means changing form. So when you say radical change of form, there's nothing more radical than change of form. For us, transformation means we are together creating a future that bears no resemblance from where we come from. Because where we come from is 350 years of exclusion, subjugation, and oppression. This is the pupa that becomes a butterfly. It bears no resemblance to that which it replaces. This is the frog that comes from the tadpole. They don't even look alike. It's a metastasizing cancer cell that posits, looks, and behaves very different from a normal cell. This is not reformation, where you are like a chameleon. When in rocks, you become brown. When in lush green circumstances, you become green. We are completing God's work. That's why Mandela, not Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, referred to us as a rainbow nation, because we achieved negotiated settlement when most people thought that we were going to kill each other. If we realized only that potential, we'll be exporting negotiated settlements, not arguing as to whether Mandela sold out or not. Because had we documented the miracle that we gave birth to on the 27th of April 1994, we would be understanding deeply and profoundly how we disarmed Constant Viljoen, how we integrated MK and APLA into the then SADF before we put the national. Would have understood the tightrope that we had to walk when there were bombings in our airports. It was called Jan Smuts at that time. But how our forebears came to the negotiating table, not expecting something in return, but prepared to give up something. Lastly, maybe, just maybe, we could provide a critical perspective. Can you imagine? Critical perspective. I don't think this ANC-led government wants us to be yabas, to agree with them on everything that they do. When we hire people in our companies, we go out of our way consciously, purposefully, deliberately to get people that don't look like us. Because we are richer when we are diverse. Have a wonderful evening. Goodbye.